What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to another episode of Bleeding B&G. I got a super excited episode for you guys today, but before we get too deep into this episode, to give you a timestamp as I do for all of my episodes, today is Tuesday, June the 17th, and it's around 6 p.m. And I say that to say that we're in the dog days of the summer. We're in the dog days of the summer. So I'm going to use this video to recap Minicamp and take a preview of training camp. And I can't do that. I couldn't do that without the man, the myth, and the legend. You hear him on 106.7 The Fan. You hear him on the Team 980, stirring the pot on the airwaves. So I had to get him on so we could talk hot takes. We could talk anything Washington Commanders. And I'm talking about my guy with Lynell Willingham. How you doing, my guy?
I'm good, man. Let's do it. See, and look, you already started. This is gonna be the clip to get posted to the stirring the pot. It's not even that the pot gets stirred. You just know how I give it, man. I'm gonna tell it how T.I. is, man.
Absolutely. I don't expect you to be any different on today's episode. That's why when we reached out and we touched base yesterday and you said you wanted to come on the show, I was super excited to have you on. Because one thing that you do, you get interaction, bro. You get interaction, bro. So whether people want to call you a shock jock or not, like I told you yesterday, I love your work, bro, because, you be boots on the ground. So when he's not on the airwaves, he's boots on the ground in Ashburn. So that's why I wanted to bring him on. And we can actually start with some of the observations you had while you were boots on the ground in Ashburn before we get into, what everybody came to talk about. So what did you notice from Ashburn? Commanders just recapped the mandatory minicamp last week, concluding their phase 3 of off-season workouts. What were some things that you saw when you were boots on the ground at Ashburn?
Well, I'm not even gonna do it. I'm not gonna.
We'll get into that. Trust me. We'll get into that.
No, I thought first of all, like I always preface any like OTA phase 3, even when we get to training camp and it's just helmets and jerseys and shorts. It's hard to take too much away, but there are certain things that stick out. You see a lot of different guys getting opportunities with the first team. And you just wonder who is going to seize their opportunity and who is going to be put in kind of that pole position, getting put into training camp. And there's a name that's been buzzing, and always say it, right? I'm a man first when I do this. I was not trashing, but I was questioning whether or not, Luke McCaffrey's job was going to be safe and whether or not he'd have a spot on the 53. He's someone that through the voluntary OTAs and then the mandatory minicamp has looked good. Anytime Dan Quinn takes the time at a press conference to really highlight you and talk about you for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, you know that you're really doing something right. And he did that on the last day of minicamp. And I see what he's seeing. I think, Jay, you know this, bro. Like last year, when they talk about, I feel like sometimes when players say things, fans call BS, like, oh, okay, whatever, because they've never been out there. They don't understand that it's difficult. They cross-trained him last year as an outside wide receiver as well as a slot wide receiver. So when you hear things like, he wasn't able to play fast, he's really not. He's thinking like, is this my route on this play when I'm the X, or is this my route on this play when I'm inside in the slot? So now that he's got really a grasp on the offense and is going into year 2 and you're really fine-tuning the details of things and he understands what he's doing, it's allowing him to play faster. We saw it on kick return. He's got athleticism. There is a run after the catch ability that he's got. It's just about him being in the right place at the right time, knowing what he's supposed to be doing. And the other thing is this for me, and we haven't really got to see this yet because we don't have pads, his play strength was the other thing for me. Being more competitive at the point of attack as a blocker, because they need him to block in the screen game and in the run game. And then, beating press man coverage. So he's looked good doing the beat press man coverage thing this summer, and has looked good to this point. And it feels like he's somebody, that could have a role and potentially be that third wide receiver or that outside wide receiver opposite Terry McLaurin.
I'm so excited to hear that because you remember last time that you were on this pod, I told you I'm a gambling man. And I actually put my gambling credibility on the line with Luke McCaffrey for about 4 weeks. I tweeted out, all right, this is Luke McCaffrey anytime touchdown. This is the week. And he we saw what he did. And I can say that bet never came to fruition. But I'm excited to hear that because one thing that I don't think a lot of people realize, and I don't know if it's the skin color, but Luke McCaffrey is a special athlete. When you look at his frame and his athletic profile, specifically talking about like his 3-cone time, he had one of the fastest 3-cones in combine history. And he's coming from that McCaffrey bloodline. So I'm not super, shocked to hear that, with him being more acclimated into the NFL, because he has the right people in his ear. And with him being allowed to play fast, we can see some of that athletic prowess, at its head. So I'm super excited to hear that. So I know I said that we were going to get into it. So let me dress it up. So I think some of the biggest news coming out of Ashburn, whether it be voluntary OTA or the mandatory minicamp session, was about the 3 players that didn't attend the voluntary OTA session, and then the 2 it would ultimately be 1 player that didn't attend the mandatory minicamp session. So let's start with the first one. And this is the guy. This is the biggest reason why you are on today, because you set social media, Commanders Twitter, and the airwaves on fire. And I honestly listened to you when you had this take live. But if you don't know, Laremy Tunsil used, I'm talking to the audience because of course you know, but if the audience doesn't know, Laremy Tunsil used Lynell's analysis of him not attending the voluntary OTA session, but him, attending a couple of street life events when he first came up here to sign his contract. And, he gave his thoughts about it. And Laremy Tunsil actually used that as the drop of his most recent workout video. And like I said, it caught Commanders social media ablaze, Commanders Twitter ablaze, and it caught a lot of mixed reaction. I think it's leaning more heavy one way than another, but I'm gonna lay the floor out for you to give your response. And what did you initially feel when you saw that video? Because I was taken aback by it, because I was like, oh, this guy, he's only been in the city about 2 months, and he's got his guys on the team tapped into sports talk radio. How did you feel when you first saw that video?
First of all, I said, okay, Laramie's different. First of all, okay, Slim's different. And I respect it all the way, bro. Like, man, that's the thing that I don't want to get, like, misconstrued with all of this. Like, I'm going to try to get the interview. There was never nothing that's personal. I just gave my thought on all 3 of them not being there, and then him in particular, because of those details that I had shared. But, like, that's just me. I don't know. People looked at it as me trying to stir the pot. That's just my analysis of it. Like, I say things all the time, man. Like, that's how I felt about it. There's no disrespect to Laremy. Laramie's a grown ass man. No one cares if he goes out and parties and clubs. Everybody does that. I had my boys yelling at Debo Samuel in the club, but when he first got here, like on some funny shit, like recording him, they put it on their story and all that. Talking about some why not at practice or some geek and stuff, because that's what people do when they see celebrities in the club and you're a regular average Joe. It's all just entertainment, social media, fun and games, man. It ain't no people try to make it like it was like a beef between. I guarantee you, if I walk up to Laremy Tunsil, shake my hand,
it's gonna be cool.
It's gonna be. I'm gonna laugh about it because the edit tough as hell. First of all, that was the first thing I really thought was like, oh shit, this is a tough edit. Like, but I think he's gonna be a dog here. I just hope. The one thing that I would say about Laremy, if you watched him last year, this was not the 5-time Pro Bowler. The way he played last year, especially that first 6 weeks of the season where he really racked up a lot of those penalties that led to him leading the NFL in that category, which is something that this offense, Jay, can't afford. What was the Achilles heel of this offense last year when they got behind the sticks? Can you imagine if he's false starting and you're in 1st and 15, how pissed you would be as a fan and how much it sets this offense back? So that's the one thing that I am weary of when it comes to him. But other than that, I expect him to be the 5-time Pro Bowler that he's been. I think he really helps out this offensive line. Him and Josh Connolly, having them as your bookend tackles, knowing the type of offense that Cliff wants to run, getting horizontal with the screen game, having him being, out and leading and being the guy that takes out the corner and the safety, like that's what he's built for. I think he fits like a glove in the offense. The run blocking has been something that's been criticized with him over his career, but honestly, I think it's something that's honestly been blown out of proportion. He's big as hell. You know how it is with run blocking. It's not always about putting somebody in the grass. It's about cutoff angles and getting your ass around and being able to turn your hips and be athletic. And he does that perfectly. So I think it's a really good fit, and it helps out the team a lot.
Yeah, contrary to what many people believe, I totally believe you when you say you're like unbothered. Because some people think like you said, they think it's a beef, and I think you're a couple years younger than me. We come from the era of trolling, right? So this is the hand that we're dealt in this era. Exactly. And that's essentially what Laremy did. That's essentially what both of you guys were doing, right? Because like I told you, I didn't necessarily completely disagree with your take, because I know you watch ball And Laremy Tunsil wasn't the Laremy Tunsil of the past last year, especially early in the season. And it was almost as if he was playing his way into, I wouldn't want to say shape, but playing his way into playing, regular season football, because I'm glad that you pointed it out. The first 6 weeks were rough for him. But bringing him in, he does have the cachet and the credibility of, that 5-time All-Pro. So pairing him with a guy like Josh Connolly, looking at this offensive line, I think that this offensive line has a lot of promise, and it can make a night and day change from what it was last year. What you think about the offensive line as a whole, especially when Sam Cosmi comes back? But we actually talked about one guy yesterday that I think might be flying a little bit under the radar. I'm going to let you touch on him.
I'm glad you brought him up, man, because I told you that yesterday, like, you're the first person outside of me that I've really seen bring him up. Mm-hmm. Nate Herbig, who they brought in from Pittsburgh, is somebody that started games before in this league and has been a starter really his whole entire career. He didn't play at all, I don't think, last year because of injury, but you now bring him in the mix, and I think he has a really good chance to potentially beat out Nick Allegretti for that guard spot opposite Brandon Coleman until Sam Cosmi comes back. But when Cosmi does come back, there's a top 5 offensive line in the National Football League. If Josh Connolly, this is the one thing, and I know you know this too, play strength with him is the big issue. How much stronger can he get from now to the start of camp, to the start of the regular season? Because when you get into the regular season, your workload changes and you're ramping down, and there's more mental preparation. So, like, his play strength is a big thing for me. Watching him out there, like, just footwork-wise, technique-wise, the hands match up with the feet. He doesn't get too wide on pass sets and things like that. Like, he's really refined in pass pro. We haven't seen him as a run blocker yet, though, in the play strength. And that doesn't come until you're in training camp with the pads on. So I wouldn't be stunned if him and Andrew Wiley kind of did the submarine thing that Lucas and Brandon Coleman did last year. It wouldn't stun me until he's ready to handle it. Now, I know that was partially because of injury last year with Coleman, because if he didn't get hurt in camp, I think he would have been the day one left tackle, and I don't know if Corn Lucas would have played. But I think this year that could really be a situation. Wiley's actually gotten reps at left tackle. So when they went team, Laramie's not – that was the other thing that I was talking about that I don't know if anybody else mentioned it or not. Laremy showed up to mandatory minicamp but did not really participate. He did all of 5 reps in individual, and then he went over and worked on the side with a trainer doing sprints and stuff during team. So I took that.
How do you look in those 5 reps though? How do you look in those? I know it was 5 reps.
He's
but
going. It wasn't team. I'm sorry. It was individual.
Oh, okay.
And he's going at 65% speed. And I'm not trying to. That's the whole thing. Every time I bring that up, this is not me critiquing.
Now, I know you
Laremy.
like to give detail.
This is me being inquisitive as a sports media person. You didn't show up during voluntary. Marshawn didn't show up during voluntary. Marshawn showed up to mandatory, has gone 100% through everything. You showed up to mandatory, didn't really do anything the one day you were fully dressed, and then the next day you got a veteran rest day. So I'm like, is he injured or out of shape? And the out of shape thing, it's not to be negative. It's what some guys are out of shape at this point in the year. Like, you talk to Logan Paulson or Brian Mitchell, anybody that's played, that's just a part of the sport. I'm just wondering though, because why didn't you practice? And if it's an injury, why weren't you here during voluntary so our guys can take a look at you, so we can have you in the building? It's just their behavior with him to start has been interesting to me, and I called it out. And it's not even me calling it out; it's me being inquisitive. So I'm tired of people trying to paint everything that I say about this situation as negative. Jay, you watch everything. Do they not come out and say that the only guy's spot on the offensive line that's solidified is his? Did they do that at any other position? It's almost like they're coddling him, and maybe that's a part of his nature. Because if you couldn't get and jive with D'Amico Ryan's culture in Houston, which clearly you couldn't because they shipped you out, something happened there. You don't just move a player of that caliber. And this is not me trying to be negative. This is what my job is, to look at this objectively from both sides. But I'm a fan at the end of the day. I believe this is my favorite team. I've rooted for this team since I was a little kid. So I want them to be successful, but I'm always going to look at both sides of the coin, because that's what I'm paid to do as a solo radio host. I don't normally work with a partner. So I got to give you both sides of it. There is no counter argument to make. So I always look at things big picture, why have they treated Tunsil this way since he's gotten here? And I'm not saying it's a negative thing, because look, superstars, I understand it. In the real world, in sports, the best players get preferential treatment. And if you've never been on a team and played team sports, you wouldn't understand that. And you would say that, oh, you're not supposed to. That's just the way it is, man. He's more valuable than others. this is the real world, man. If you don't bring value to something, then what are you? So I think it's the same way with Tunsil and kind of how they're treating him right now. And somebody said it on Twitter. It was interesting to me. They were like, man, you're not used to us having superstar players and them getting that treatment. Maybe that's part of it. That's real talk. Like, I can hear that. So it was interesting, man. I'm curious to see how it all plays out. I think he should be motivated. I know he's looking for another contract extension. So I think he's going to end up playing really well and help them out and help them get over the hump.
I'm glad that you were able to get that off your chest.
Yeah, man.
You explained it so eloquently because, like I told you, I didn't completely disagree with your take. And if I was out there boots on the ground, I would be questioning, why is he only doing 5 reps and things of that nature. But I do think us not having players of that cachet in the last couple of years has tainted our vision and our expectation on, how, these superstar elite talents treat the off season. It's a reason why, Trent Williams later in his career in Washington wasn't coming to, mandatory minicamp and voluntary OTAs because he loved what he was doing in Houston. And I've been kind of like running with, Laremy and Trent with those, parallels with him coming to Washington. But speaking of Nate Herbig really quickly, not the only reason, but I know we are 2 of the only people that have been talking about him. The reason that I mentioned him yesterday, somebody asked who was going to be filling in for Cosme while he's on the men, and they mentioned Nick Allegretti and Andrew Wiley. I mentioned Nate Herbig because I just think that we need to get bigger and stronger on that offensive line. And out of those 3 guys, he's the most physically imposing prospect. It's one of the reasons why I love the move of Brandon Coleman to left guard, because going against that Philly front 7 and that giant front 7 that is highly slept on, you gotta have mountain of men pause like the Eagles have. Like, it's a reason why that offensive line is so big, because they know what to go against in the NFC East. But we ain't got to spend too much time on the offensive line. You actually mentioned this guy, but let's talk about the second guy that didn't attend the voluntary OTA session, but did ultimately show up at the mandatory mini camp session. And this is a guy similar to how you felt about Laremy Tunsil. People have been mad at me because I said that Marshawn Lattimore left his hamstring on Bourbon Street last year. They're like, dude, how can you say this, dude? What are you doing? But, which was pleasant to hear. I've heard from multiple people that were in Ashburn that he looked solid in his 2 days on the field. So I just wanted to hear from, the first person point of view with you being, boots on the ground.
So it was funny. I actually ran into him and Jordan McGee as they were walking out of the bubble. And I was like, Southeast Sean, just to see what he would say. And he started smiling, geeked up. We dapped up, and I dapped up Jordan McGee and kind of went about our separate ways. But good spirits. He's happy to be here. He likes the nickname, by the way. I don't know if you've heard that, Jay. Southeast Sean. When he does play well.
So, not to cut you off, what's crazy about that? No. So I grew up in Southeast, and one of my best friends growing up, I don't know if you watched the New Orleans Saints in like 2017, 2018, but the cornerback opposite of Marshawn Lattimore was Ken Crawley. And Ken Crawley's from Southeast, like me, and that's one of my best friends growing up. And I haven't gotten a chance to say that, but I think this is one of the reasons why I was so passionate about Marshawn, because I followed his career since he was Kenny's rookie. I call him Kenny. He was Kenny's rookie in 2007. So I followed his career since then. So, his 3 or 4 games that he played with Washington was like a letdown to all the fans, but it was a special letdown to me because I was expecting like prime Champ Bailey. And I know he's getting longer in the tooth, but to hear you say that he was, in good spirits and just that Southeast Sean, that's a coincidence, because one of his right-hand man up here, I promise you, in the DMV area,
he understands
is from Southeast. Yeah, he gets
it. Wasn't even really too much conversation after. I ain't gonna jazz it up, act like we talked for 10 minutes, but we dapped up. You said, how are you? I said, we did the whole 9. I was talking to Jordan McGee a bit, asked him how he felt, said he felt good. And we went our separate ways, but on the practice field, he looked good. Luke McCaffrey got him on a route where Luke kind of lost him, got to the top of the route, jerked it off, and that's the white chocolate to him. And I think that was the play that I was like, he looks interesting and different this year. But outside of that, like Marshawn Lattimore had a play where they're going against first-team offense. Jaden Daniels throwing a hitch to Noah Brown, and the way that he got into his drop and then broke down and drove on the football, like that looked like the Marshawn Lattimore that we were accustomed to seeing and that we quite frankly thought we were getting at the trade deadline last year. And as you pointed out, like he wasn't that guy. And he admitted it. And I think he's a stand-up dude. For him to say what he said after practice the other day, saying, look, I wanted to like not let my teammates down, and I played through that injury. He's like, that was him at like 70%.
Mm-hmm.
So when he's healthy, like I do think he is going to be a real difference maker for this defense. And it's a big reason why I think, and I haven't like jumped out there with this yet, like they're going to be an interesting group, man. I know people are worried about the pass rush. I think they'll manufacture it with the pen, so to speak, like drawing up stunts and things of that nature and blitzing. But like if he's going to lock down one half of the field, like I think he has the potential to, and Trey Amos or Jonathan Jones can lock down the other outside corner spot, and then Mikey's got to – that's the key to me that I'm actually – I won't say I'm worried about, but he's the big part of this as well. Like he didn't play in the slot at all last year, pretty much. So him going back to the slot, how comfortable is he? How comfortable is he with the run fits? We know he's a tough dude, so it shouldn't be an issue, but he's a smaller guy in the slot, so you naturally worry about that. But, like, I think he's going to be – I think the Marshawn Lattimore overall will be really good for the defense and has a chance to really unlock everything else they do in the secondary.
Super excited to hear you say that. And let's move on to the last guy that didn't come to voluntary OTA session and ultimately didn't come to mandatory minicamp, and that's Terry McLaurin. Now, Lynell, I did a video about a month ago where I titled it that the Commanders have a Terry McLaurin problem. And the reason that I said that is because out of all the receivers that you deem top 15, wherever you want to rank Terry, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell me where you rank Terry amongst the wide receivers in the league, he's the second oldest outside of Tyreek Hill. And I know he's only going into year 7, but that puts the Commanders in a peculiar situation when you're negotiating a contract, because are you considering him like a young 30-year-old, or do you see that he's hitting age 30 and you expect him to age out like most receivers do when they hit age 30? So that was like the dilemma that the Commanders had, that I ultimately think that they are facing. And it seems to be something that might be true with, the holdup in the contract negotiation. So what are your opinions about Terry McLaurin, the contract negotiation? And when you top it off, what do you think Terry McLaurin's ultimate ranking? Because, Washington, leave it up to a Washington Commander fan, they'll tell you he's the best wide receiver in the NFL, right? And I said that he's not on blank check status. He's not Jamar Chase. He's not Justin Jefferson. But he might be DK Metcalf, who was around $33 million per year. So what you think about just Terry McLaurin in a nutshell?
I think everything you said is spot on, too, about, like, the problem that they have. There's so many – it's a peculiar, weird negotiation with him because he's 30, because he doesn't have the wear and tear of a 30-year-old. From his camp's perspective, like him and Buddy Baker are making the argument of, hey, DK Metcalf's always on the injury report. DK Metcalf misses games. I don't miss games. That's like one of his number one traits and why, he's such a dog, tough receiver and why we love him. But, like, ultimately, I think they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. And I feel like if you're going to pay him, just pay him.
Mm-hmm.
That's my whole thing. And if not, let's see what happens next. And I know fans don't want to think about that, but, like, we don't have time to play around here. We got a small window while Jaden is on this contract, and you got to make shrewd moves. And if one of them is flipping Terry McLaurin for assets because you can't agree on the deal, then if you're going to do it, rip the Band-Aid off. Don't let it sit there and, be something that festers here. But I think they're in a tough spot because Terry had this play out exactly the way he wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
When he signed that short-term deal, it was to hit free agency again at this time. And he's hitting free agency after having a career year in touchdowns. You saw how impactful he was during the playoffs. He looked like in the playoffs, like my mindset kind of changed.
No, he looked top 5 in the playoffs.
Man, I'm like, whoa, he's capable of this. Like, he was acting bad, man. So I think Washington fans may not like this. Realistically speaking, I think he's anywhere from like 10 to 15 or like 10 to 16. Like, you can make an argument that like Malik Neighbors, like if you're just looking at Neighbors versus Terry, like I want Neighbors.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Like, I think he's like,
I tweeted that last year. Washington fans wanted my.
He's the worst starting receiver in our division, but
mm-hmm.
that comment will get flipped because people are idiots. But like, look at the receivers in our division. He's not better than AJ Brown. He's not better than CeeDee Lamb, and he's not better than Malik Neighbors. But he's still Terry freaking McLaurin. Though I'm never going to disrespect him because he's a dog. And you saw what happened when he got a quarterback. I think him in the 50-50 balls is a real thing, and to be doing that undersized like just shows his skills. Like the ball skills he has is crazy. I know we get on him from time to time for not catching with his hands all the time, but like I think he's a top wide receiver, one of the top wide receivers. But the receivers also, there's the deepest position group in the NFL. So calling somebody top 10, it's like a really big honor at that position. Mm-hmm. I think he's anywhere from like 10 to 16. And for the worth, if DK's $60 million guaranteed, 32.9 per. For Terry, my negotiations start at 34. I need $63 million guaranteed. Like he should be feeling like, and the numbers say that he's a better receiver than DK. So
Yeah,
for
I would rank him above DK.
the age, because the gap in talent to me is so significant between him and DK, I think the age thing should get thrown out of the window. And maybe that's what Buddy Baker and them are negotiating. And Washington's like, hold on, he's 30. You know how these negotiations work. It's Washington's job to tell Buddy Baker and them why I don't want to pay you. And it's the most savage thing ever. That's why they don't let players negotiate. That's why you get agents. That's why the Lamar Jackson thing in Baltimore is always like fascinating, because he does his own deals, and they got to look at him in his eyes and tell him, you suck in the playoffs, bro. Like, and stuff like that. So,
and he said that the negotiation tables, there's no liaison between those.
It's going to be interesting. Like, I'll put a percentage on it. I feel like 75-25. 75% chance it gets done, 25% chance it doesn't.
I feel like that's high based off of what other people are putting out there, but I don't necessarily disagree.
Washington also has the franchise tag at their disposal too, so they do have the ultimate leverage. While Terry might have the immediate leverage, they have the ultimate leverage, which is why it could get ugly if they don't come to a deal.
Quiet as it's kept, I think that's what's ultimately going to happen. I think Terry's going to play this year out on his deal, have another solid year, and justify paying him that top 5 wide receiver contract for at least 1 year with the franchise tag in 2026. I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, that would be interesting. The fans are going to be mad. This is a tough negotiation because of the position, the age, and then the year
and the player.
Off of.
How polarizing of a player Terry is for the fans.
So it's just crazy. I think it gets done though. But if it doesn't, like Adam Peters and them, like this is gonna be the first like blip. Well, it's like a teenager getting his first pimple. Like you're real now. It's not the honeymoon phase is over.
All right, I appreciate your thoughts on that. So let's close the book on minicamp and let's look forward to training camp before we head on out of here. A couple quick hitters. You ain't got to spend too long on it. But as a Washington fan, I'm so used to like quarterback competitions throughout training camp, and it's such a unique, different feeling that we don't have to look forward to that this year because we know that the Golden Boy 5, that's QB1. But what are some other training camp battles that may be flying under the radar that you'll be looking forward to come the end of July?
Yeah, this is my favorite conversation because it's going to be interesting to see how I think compared to the other people that are out there, your John Kimes and the other more seasoned, polished reporters. But you're hearing it from me first because I don't think anyone's given this out yet. Like, I think linebacker 3, Jordan McGee, Kane Madrano, Dom Hampton. I think those 3 guys have really had nice off seasons. I know Dom Hampton's put on a considerable amount of weight. I think Jordan McGee's the leader in the clubhouse because I think he's ultimately the best player. But like Kane Madrano's had a good spring. He had a forced fumble on Deebo Samuel, just showing like instincts. Like, he's got the foot speed and the ability to cover linebackers and tight ends. What his role is ultimately going to be is going to be interesting. It also takes me to like his other potential spot, the safety opposite Quan Martin. And I think people have just penciled Will Harris into that job. I don't see it that way at all. I think, how Joe Witt thinks, like the best players are going to play. And I know they do that 3 safety look a lot. Percy Butler has gotten the opportunity, but I don't judge Percy in these situations. I judge Percy when there's contact, when you got to go fill the alley, and it's you and Saquon Barkley in the hole, and you got to shake a leg or lose one. Are you going to come out and make a bad effort, or are you going to take on the block? Like his physicality, he's the best gunner in the NFL on punt. Give that to him right off the rip. He should be a Pro Bowl special teamer. That might be all he is. I don't know if they're going to continue to force him on this defense. He doesn't fit the physical profile of their defense. Everybody is big and hulking and can whack you. Like, that's not him. He takes bad angles sometimes, and like I don't know if he would be my 3rd safety. I think Jeremy Reeves has really good instincts and somebody that may not have the foot speed, but he's got the football smarts to where he's going to put himself in the right play and take the correct angle. That's a guy that I like a lot. Will Harris, he's come from New Orleans. I don't know a whole lot about him. I know he played a lot last year, and he's gotten time in this league before, but we'll see. Lance Newmark, I know, is the big reason why he's here. And then Tyler Owens is the other interesting one. 2 names, Tyler Owens and then Robert McDaniel, the UDFA from Jackson State. They've played him at the post safety. They've played him in the slot. They've played him at outside corner. I haven't seen anybody else in this secondary get played at that many different spots throughout this offseason program. Tyler Owens is the other guy that's getting different looks as well at that dime linebacker spot and then playing the nickel in that slot corner role too, which is interesting because it's like, can he really cover? He doesn't look too comfortable covering. Ben Sinnott wore his ass out on that Wednesday practice, and just he couldn't cover. And he's had a really good spring too, Ben Sinnott. I don't know if that's somebody that's people have talked about, but he was definitely making plays out there. But the safety spot's interesting, man. If Tyler Owens can hit, I think he may be my preferred guy just because I think he could do it all. But Robert McDaniels is interesting, and then Jeremy Reeves. Percy Butler is the one that I'm like not as high on. There's no disrespect to Percy. I just see him as like he's one of the best special teamers in the whole NFL. He may not be ready to play defense at this point in his career.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, safety opposite Quan Martin, because I did a video about 2 weeks ago where I said that the Commanders are going to unleash this demon in year 2 of his career. And it was Tyler Owens, because there's 3 guarantees in life. There's death taxes, and Dan Quinn defense is having a big safety, whether that be Cam Chancellor, Keanu Neal, Jeremy Chin last year, or J-Ron Curse. All of those guys are at least 6'2", 220 pounds. And, Will Harris, while he is a thumper, he doesn't necessarily fit that bill as being that physically imposing guy on the back end. So to hear you mention a guy like Tyler Owens, it's kind of like put a feather in my cap, because I ultimately think just depending on how his football processing is and his IQ, because this is a guy that does think that the earth is flat. I ultimately think that's what's holding him back, because if you look at his athletic profile, his RAS score and things of that nature, he should be the best safety in the NFL. But we know it's not all about the athletics.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned like the Dan Quinn history of the position too. Like, think about the way Dallas played. I think about Dan Quinn like this on defense. His same problem that he had in Dallas, he brought here to Washington. They couldn't stop the run in Dallas either. So it's about him having a change in mentality of, hey, do I play big up front in my front seven, or do I go with the hybrid guys? And I think they're trying to build this roster to where you have a combination of both. That really shows up front with the D-line. They've revamped this D-line to where I actually really like it a lot. It's just going to take some unheralded guys being unearthed. And who was Dorrance Armstrong before he was Dorrance Armstrong, right? So, like, Jalen Holmes is a guy to me that I think is going to be able to come in and compete for snaps and make plays. He's got that thick body type and thick build to where you can set the edge, but you got enough juice coming out of your stance that you can rush the passer. Like, Dorrance Armstrong, I think, is going to have a big year. He led the team in pressures last year, but he didn't have the sack numbers that Dante Fowler did. So, and by the way, I say this all the time, Jay. Dante Fowler's 10.5 sacks was the quietest 10.5 sacks you'll ever see in your life. It was a couple of multi-sack games. He did not consistently impact the quarterback, and I thought he hurt this defense more than he helped it.
I think I might run
at the end of the year.
I think I might run for like 200 yards running behind you against Dante Fowler, to be 100% honest.
He's not a big, physically imposing dude, so like I'm happy that I kind of figured he wouldn't be back. And his little rant that he did on Twitter was crazy about, like, you think because you got 10.5 sacks, you just deserve to get paid. There's no.
He thought he was Myles Garrett. He thought he was
bro, it was wild. He was acting different. But the D line is another one of those competition spots to me too. Just I think 8 guys are going to consistently play. So you know how that position rolls. They played a lot of dudes last year. Who fits in that 8? Like, where does Eddie Goldman fit? Like, is Eddie Goldman and Javon Kinlaw like solidified as like your noses, or is solidified as your nose? Like, how are they going to mix and match? Like, I feel like they're going to play big, small. Like, Kinlaw will run with Payne, Goldman will run with Newton, and like that's kind of how they'll play, because I think they do want to be bigger up front and stop the run. But I think they're going to play a lot more of these 3 linebacker sets too, which is why I think, like, if Jordan McGee can stay healthy, he'll win the job. But like, Kane's there. They like Kane. They drafted Kane. Like, they got Dom Hampton there. It's last year's draft pick. So that's a spot. On offense, we talked about the guard spot. Who's the swing tackle? Is Andrew Wiley going to win the swing tackle job over Trent Scott? That's another one of those things that I'm looking at, because Trent Scott and Andrew Wiley have both, like, Andrew Wiley lined up at left tackle. I was stunned. I had no clue what I was looking at. But like, that's the first time since he's been in Washington that he's done that. So it was interesting to see. Wide receiver 2, I guess. Like, I think it's going to be, in their like 11 stuff, is going to be Terry and Luke. I think. I don't know, because that makes me feel like Debo can't. It's not that Debo can't do it, but like, if they prefer him, if he can show that he's a better blocker than Debo, and I think Debo as a thick dude probably has the edge over him in that. I think that's what determines the outside spot. But like, I think they're going to run 3 and 4 wide receiver sets a lot, because I know they like Jalen Lane a lot. And Deebo Samuel's got to be on the field. They have weapons. That's the big thing. Like, they have so much speed. If Eckler's going to be healthy, if Bill is going to give them punch out of the backfield. I was slowing my roll on him because I didn't get the chance to see him up close in person. He's like legitimately fast. So,
and that was my biggest question about him. I've been hyping up Bill for three months, but I didn't know if he could run away from NFL defenders.
Yeah, it's still hard to see though because it's not with the pads on yet. But I think him and B-Rob are going to complement each other. B-Rob actually looked really good, bro. Like they have weapons out the wazoo, and if they can stay healthy, bro, like they may have the best offense in the NFL.
We used to be Rob looking good in the springtime, though. I needed to translate to the fall. We're so used to it.
Very true.
But really quickly, one point that you touched on, when you said it, I was kind of taken aback about Luke potentially starting on the boundary. But if you think about what San Fran did last year towards the end of the season, they were almost exclusively putting Debo in the slot when they realized he couldn't get off press coverage. So I don't know if that's something that Cliff has saw and wants to, relay it back to Washington. But that's interesting to hear you say that about Luke potentially starting on the boundary in 11 personnel. All right, two quick ones before we head out of here. So Washington fans, they're so used to, preseason heroes, whether it be Marcus Mason or Marco Mitchell. Give me one unheralded name that fans should get acclimated with between now and training camp and ultimately the preseason. Who's one guy that we aren't talking about, but you think we'll be talking about in 6 weeks?
Jalen Holmes. I really like Jalen Holmes at defensive end. I think he is going to compete for big-time snaps, and he's going to play a lot during the preseason because he's probably going to be starting on the second team or the third team when camp comes, but he's thick, has got get-off, and, really could be an impactful guy that can get you a sneaky 4.5, 5 sacks next year on defense. And then on offense, I'm going to go – man, Chris Moore has made plays during camp. The veteran, Chris Moore, has been bagging people low-key. So that maybe is a guy that during the preseason flashes a little bit.
All right, and one bold prediction. Doesn't have to be regarding training camp. Just one bold prediction that you have in June regarding the 2025 Washington Commanders. You give me one, and I'll give you mine as well.
This is going to be a big one. The Commanders are going to finish in the top 12 in total defense next year.
Ooh. A little better than top half.
I think they're going to be markedly improved on that side. And if they can stay healthy, I think if they're better stopping the run, they were a good group last year. They didn't give up the big play a lot. And that's something we're not used to here in Washington. Their defense kind of was like death by 1,000 paper cuts. Teams will have these long drives on them. It wasn't like they was giving up chunks at a huge rate, but that's a bold prediction for me. I think the defense is going to be a top 12. I would say top 10, but that would probably go crazy online. But
quick footnote about Trey Amos. We didn't get a chance to talk about him. How'd he look in camp?
Sticky. I just wonder when the officials are out there. He is handsy. That's the one thing that is tough translating from college to the NFL is you can't be as grabby at the line of scrimmage, and we'll see if he gets picked on in that regard. But he's got the swagger of a corner one. You see the way he carries himself. I got a little social media thing coming out. We asked some of the players which player they wanted to come see them playing primetime, NBA Youngboy. So that tells you what type of 4K Trey, man. That's he's going to be – I really like the way he carries himself, bro. Can he tackle? That's what I need to know. That's going to be the number one thing is he going to be bouted on the edge or is he going to be pussyfooting? And if he's going to tackle, he's going to start. Because I know Jonathan Jones is going to tackle.
He definitely has what the kids say, aura. He definitely has aura. He has that Louisiana swag. It seems like Louisiana kind of taking over the NFL with, the dances, the touchdown celebrations, and things of that nature. So I know I said I was going to give you one bold take before we get on out of here. So in honor of our guest, the bold take that I have today is that Laremy Tunsil will be a first-team All-Pro.
Wow.
First-team All-Pro in 2025.
There we go.
I think he has the potential to do it. And I think if, a lot of times when they're voting for these season awards, a lot of these reporters, they don't know what they're watching. So they look at a lot of box scores. And I think Jaden's the type of quarterback that he's so elusive. We'll look up and see that Laremy Tunsil only allowed 1 sack this year. So, yeah, that's my bold take is Laremy Tunsil, 2025 All-Pro. How you feel about that one?
I think it's possible. We just got to limit the penalties if you're going to be an All-Pro. That's the only thing. So
I agree. All right, so Lynell, once again, I appreciate you doing this, man. I let the people know where they can hear you on the airwaves. Is there anything else you want to put people on the game before we head on out of here?
Nah, man. NELL_BTP on all the social medias. And then coming up in the fall, last year I had a live show I was doing out of TGI Fridays. We got another thing coming up this fall to where I want everybody like you and all the other, creators in the fan community to come have a space to where we all just brawl and just let it all rip and let takes fly, make predictions for the weekend. So that's something definitely that's on the way too.
For sure, I would love that. Keep me in tune on that. Like I said, I appreciate you coming on. As always, guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification button, and I'll check in on y'all on the flip side. Peace. All right.